Hi guys, welcome back. This is Tarun again, back with another fitness video for you folks. So yes guys, summers are in and everybody is talking about looking leaner. So when I say leaner, there's only one thing, or rather one word comes into our mind, which is cutting up. So problem is that we talk about cutting, we talk about bulking, but we actually really don't know what these two terms are. So bulking, I've done a different video which I'm going to add a link in my description box, but I really want to talk about cutting in this video. Cutting is something that we all will be, most of the guys will be kind of focusing more on minimizing their body fat because they want to wear their skimpy t-shirts, flaunt their chiseled bodies. Hopefully they're chiseled, whatever effort that they've put in winters, rather bulking up. So what exactly is cutting, guys? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you can probably do a right cutting cycle for you, so that you get the best benefits of that, because there are a lot of cutting mistakes I made which I really don't want you to go through. So let's quickly get right into it. So what exactly is cutting? So cutting is nothing, guys. It's nothing but creating a small calorie deficit for you folks, so that your muscles, or rather when you minimize that body fat by creating that calorie deficit, your muscles start showing. That is as simple or as complicated as you can make it to be. Bulking is the exact opposite, wherein you add little calorie surplus so that you start eating more, so hoping that you pack on more muscle. But what typically happens is, I've seen guys, they pack on a lot of water weight, they get fat, and this is exactly my point to them is, guys, don't do dirty bulking, because all the fat that you're accumulating, one day you have to get rid of that fat, and the more dirty bulking you do, the difficult for you to get cut up. So guys, that's where it all boils down to right bulking. So coming back to cutting, so what can you do to have the right cutting mix for you? Which means, what are the cutting tools that you should follow so that you look your best and leaner this summer? So let's start. Number one, create that calorie deficit, guys. And when I say calorie deficit, if you're eating about 2500 3000 odd calories, I'm not expecting you to cut down to about 2000 or 1500. That's the worst thing you can do. Remember, you want to look leaner yet muscular. You don't want to look skinny. So what's the point of doing bulking if you really had to kind of lose all that weight? Correct? It defeats the purpose. So when I say calorie deficit, kind of eliminate some food from your diet, like high carb food. Let's say if you're 2500 calories, get down to about 2300, 2200, not below that. Not anything below about 10 to 15%, you're compromising on your muscle gain. So guys, just 15 to 20% of your overall calorie deficit is good enough for you, not more than that, guys. Remember, if you get leaner, you don't want to get skinnier. So right amount of deficit. Number two, and I've also seen excuse me, guys changing their training plan when it comes to cutting. And there is this myth in India, rather pretty much in India, that when you're cutting, you got to do more repetitions. And I was asking this guy in the gym, he was doing about 40 to 50 repetitions, and he's a very lean, skinny guy. I asked him, dude, what are you doing? He said, sir, I'm in my cutting cycle, I'm cutting up. Guys, that's the biggest mistake you can make. There is no such thing as cutting in terms of where you kind of take your body doing 40 50 repetitions. You don't have to. Remember, your training, nothing changes in your training. If you're following a split body part, continue to do that. Or if you really want to do, just add another cardio session to it. When I say cardio session, probably 15 minutes after your workout, start doing some cardio. It could be stationary cycle, it could be cross trainer, anything, so that you minimize your body fat, nothing else. As far as your repetition goes, stick to 8 to 12, guys. Remember, even in your cutting, you still want hypertrophy, right? You don't want to compromise on your gains that you made in your bulking or throughout the year. So don't do anything which changes your training as such. Yes, because you're eating a little lesser, you may not have that much strength to lift heavier weights, the weights that you were lifting, but that's pretty psychological in nature. Once you get past that barrier, you'll be able to train, and it's okay if you can't lift your 80% of 1 RM. You can still lift about 70%, 75%, which is still reasonably okay, so long you're lifting heavy. Don't get down, don't make that mistake which I made, right from 80%, my 1 RM to come down to about 40% and start lifting and start doing more repetitions of 15, 20, 25, 40. It's a waste of time. You're just killing your muscle, guys. Don't have to do that. Remember, you have to be lean, not skinny. Don't break your muscles, guys. So this is point number 2. Point number 3, what can you do? If you're creating that calorie deficit, guys, create it through carbs, because when you were bulking, remember, in bulking you were pretty much eating most of carbs, high dense food, and before your workout, after your workout, first thing upon waking up in your breakfast. Guys, the honeymoon is over. Now if you want to look leaner, cut down on your carbs. When I say carbs, I'm not saying eliminate those carbs, I'm saying bring it down to about 30 to 40%. If you were eating, say, about 400-500 grams of carbs every day, bring it to about 300 grams, 250 odd grams, and see how your body reacts to it. But what typically happens is when you minimize your carbs, you get into that dizzy mode, because if you're coming up from bulking phase, you'll feel, oh, I have no energy, I can't train. But that'll happen in a day or two, but it'll subside after a few days. So you have to minimize your carbs, because what will happen is, if you don't minimize your carbs, which means you have to put double the effort in the gym to burn those calories, and the results will never show up. That's why if you've seen people who failed in their cutting cycle, is because they don't make any effort in their diet pattern. Their food remains the same, but it's just that they change their training pattern of adding high repetition. That's of no use. So bring down your carbs. It's point number 3. Point number 4, now if you bring down your carbs, what you really have to do now is eat more often, which means back on your chicken, back on your fish, veggies, fibers, fruit before your workout only. Remember, I've done a video on it, and that video could be apples, strawberries, blueberries. Do that, eat every 2 to 3 hours, so that will keep you anabolic, so that you don't feel hungry. Because if you haven't taken too much of carbs, you may feel a little hungry once in a while, but if you continue to eat every 2 to 3 hours, your body will remain in an anabolic state, and which means that you're continuously feeding it, so that the engine doesn't come to a halt, which means slowing down your metabolism. So you'll be in that state wherein you're burning calories, at the same time you're not storing any fat, which is good news for cutting cycle, because you're minimizing body fat through that. So number 4 is eat more often. Number 5. Now this is something that mistake I made, and I've talked about it. I don't want you to make is to have fats. When you minimize your carbs, you really have to up your fat intake. And when I say fat intake, I don't expect you to go down to any junk shop and probably a KFC and have grilled. There's no grilled chicken in KFC. Sad, man. I wish they had. The fried chicken. No. What I want you to do is, when it comes to fat, is you really have to pack on walnuts, almonds, peanut butter, all the good omega-3, omega-6 fats, guys. Remember, you have to have it, in your breakfast, or in your, in the afternoon, but not in the nights. Preferably avoid that. These are your sources of fats, guys. Peanuts, before your workout, that's also a good source. You can have dry peanuts there, but not salted dry peanuts. So what will happen is, fats, because they have but 1 gram of fat is about close to 9 calories, it'll keep you full, it'll keep you satisfied, so that you don't get those hunger pangs. So it's very, very important in your cutting phase to have your carbs low and fat intake up. Last point, number 6, you have to avoid any kind of muscle wastage, guys. So this is the section where I talk about supplements. When I talk about muscle wastage, what can you add in your supplements? If you have money, if you have something you want to invest, this is one thing that you got to invest in, is glutamine. You have to have glutamine, guys, before going off to sleep. It has great properties which can help you break down your muscle, especially when you're dieting, when you're not eating much, at the same time you're not cutting phase. Number 2, you can also look at investing in a good fat burner. When I say fat burner, I don't mean like an ephedrine fat burner. I mean, I prefer animal cuts. And I think it's pretty old school, yet it works for a lot. You can also add some caffeine. You got to have caffeine. If you really want to speed up the process, have caffeine before your workout, but don't have a heavy carb meal before your workout, because what will happen is, again, you'll be back to square one when it comes to burning those calories. So these are whey protein is also a must for you, remember, because if you're a vegetarian, your options of food will be very, very limited compared to non-vegetarian. So you may want to add whey protein, especially after your post-workout and before going off to sleep. If you don't have casein protein, you can still take your whey protein, just to avoid that body going into a catabolic state. So these 3 supplements you must have. And last point which I'm going to make, this is mostly to do with your training, which is right here. It says F off, I'm training. That's the mantra you have to live by. When you go to the gym, screw everything, just shut your mind and just focus on training, guys. That's exactly which will make your cutting more successful, guys. Nothing else doing. All you really need to focus now is how can you make your cutting cycle successful. And these are the only 5 to 6 points, and I'm going to summarize it for you. Number one, you got to create that calorie deficit. If you're 3000 calories, bring it down to 2500, 2400, not less than that, otherwise you'll break your muscle. Number two, don't change your training, because changing your training, doing high repetition will again make you more skinnier, not leaner, make you more skinnier, and it will not make you look more muscular, because high repetition means more of muscle endurance. You don't want to compromise on your hypertrophy goals. Number three, cut down on your carbs. This is self-explanatory. You pretty much know when you cut down on your calorie, when you create that calorie deficit, create that deficit through your carbs. Number four, you got to eat more often, and when you eat more often, you got to eat a lot more protein sources like chicken, fish, veggies, fruits, and stuff like that. That's again self-explanatory. Number five, you gotta eat fats. When I talked about it, whenever you're on a dieting spree or a cutting spree, in bulking, your carbs go up and fat kind of comes down. In a cutting is the opposite. Your fat goes up and your carbs come down. And last one, to avoid muscle breakage, you gotta add some supplement which includes your glutamine, a fat burner, and whey protein. So I hope this thing gets into your head loud and clear. That's my signing off statement. Anyone of you have any questions around cutting, feel free to reach out to me either on my Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, and I'll be very happy to help you with your training goals. So until we meet again, peace